Thumbs just moving.
What's up, guys? So if you have tickers that you want to look at, message me in the chat and I will go over those once I kind of give my analysis. Once we do that, I'll send it over. And then I'm gonna let everybody know we're getting started, and then we'll get started here. All right, guys, thank you for coming. Let's get started here. Okay, so taking a look at the markets, you can see we're pretty oversold here. Let's go ahead and look at daily time frame. Okay, so NASDAQ has been selling off pretty hard here. I'm kind of going to give my analysis of the overall markets as we usually do, and then kind of go over any tickers that you guys want me to look at. So as you can see, kind of this past week, we broke support here right around 351. And basically now we're pushing down towards 3 ATR. It's a lot more obvious if you look at SPY. You can see we're right at right at that 3 ATR level. And so not saying I'm going to play a bounce unless the opportunity presents itself, but take a look. So we're at 3 ATR here. When we got to 3 ATR here, we revert back to the 21 EMA, get to 3 ATR, revert back to the 21 EMA. And that kind of just continues to happen over and over again. And so I'm kind of expecting that similar thing to happen. Like you can see here in an uptrend, 3 ATR back to the 21, 3 ATR back to the 21. And then we chop around a while, 3 ATR back to the 21, 3 ATR back to the 21. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. That could possibly happen. It might happen with Apple's earnings. It might happen if the Fed decides to cut rates. There's a lot of different scenarios that can play out this week. So there's a lot of key things coming up this week. We have Fed rate decision on Wednesday. We have Apple earnings coming out this week as well. We have some employment numbers and a few other things coming out this week. So we definitely want to keep an eye on all of those things. So with that in mind, and kind of looking at the technicals from a broader base perspective, if history repeats itself, we can kind of expect that a reversion back to the mean will happen. that 21. So if you want me to make it a little more clear, I can do that. So we take those off. You can see kind of pretty much every time we get to this 3 ATR, we come back to the mean. So that's kind of what I'm paying attention to here. So 3 ATR back to the mean, 3 ATR back to the mean, 3 ATR back to the mean, and then we switch trend, 3 ATR back to the mean, 3 ATR back to the mean. Now we're at 3 ATR again. So I'm kind of expecting a similar pattern, right? And then if we take a look at like some oscillators, things like that, you can see the stochastics oversold. We're in the oversold condition. Notice the past few times that we've gotten there, we've tended to get a bounce. And so I'm kind of paying attention to those things there. But I do note that a daily squeeze has played out. So you can see anytime we've had a significant move to the downside, it can always be identified with a squeeze. So the first time we changed structure here, we had a squeeze, and then we pretty much sold off immediately to 3 ATR and had a pretty strong sell-off. And then same thing here. We had a move, we had a squeeze, sell off straight to 3 ATR. And let's see. So this was about from a 25 point drop, $25. This one was about a $15 drop, give or take. And then this most recent squeeze that we had was about 33 to, so a $23 drop. So you can see that pretty consistently when we have a squeeze that gives us a very significant move, right? So those are kind of some things that you want to be paying attention to. So another thing that we have here is the weekly squeeze. So if I throw the EMAs back on here so you can get an idea what they look like, you can see we're kind of starting to cross over, so that's not a good sign. If this does decide to fire short, we can first look for that 400 area, and then potentially the 400, 395 area where it lines up with this 3 ATR. And then, 380, I guess, would be the next target. So we're still a long way from this kind of deciding to fire off, but also note that we're starting to get oversold on stochastic. We were oversold here. We had a strong bounce, oversold here. We had a little bit of a bounce, oversold here. We had a bounce. So you can see kind of a consistent pattern that when we get to these areas, we start to, when we get to this oversold area, we start to kind of bounce. So that's something to keep in mind here. Next, let's see. We can look at, so mainly the big thing, okay, so futures is showing that we may be firing off this squeeze, at least for ES, right? But okay, so let's kind of look at some of the things that are dictating the markets and what are kind of causing these things to sell off. So the market's kind of made up there's three main sectors that we need to pay attention to in the markets that kind of move the Dow and the NASDAQ. So XLK is kind of what moves the really all sectors. So this is all indexes. So this is something we need to pay attention to. This is the technology sector for the overall market, right? So Friday we had a squeeze fire off, but we're starting to get oversold. So you can see we got oversold here, we had a bounce, oversold here, we had a bounce, so on and so forth. But we can't ignore the fact that we have a weekly or a daily squeeze firing off. So this could kind of give us some more downside for the markets. So we want to pay attention to that. Not only that, another key sector that we want to pay attention to is the banks. And as you can see, these are not looking good either. What I'm kind of expecting is an oversold bounce for each of these sectors, not to completely change structure of the downside, but more so to pay attention to just basically for day trading perspective. So I'm kind of expecting a bounce, and you can see we're kind of already getting that. The NASDAQ's up 0.442%. and ES is up just a little bit, not much, but so from an intraday perspective, we can kind of look at, okay, SPY had a 30-minute squeeze on Friday, which we were able to catch, did end up selling off, and we had a nice move down. And then for QQQ, now we still have a gap to fill. We've got a 30-minute squeeze showing up, but you can see we're kind of getting in that oversold area. NASDAQ is stronger. So the first thing I want to go to is obviously I want to go along the NASDAQ, if anything, if the opportunity presents itself. So basically what I'd be looking for, which we might get, is kind of the start of an uptrend. You can see we've been trading in this zone here from between 14,450 and now 14,150. So we're kind of trading in between that area for now, kind of just consolidating. So what are my thoughts going into this week? I'm kind of expecting an oversold bounce. And mainly that is or reasoning behind that is because we're sitting at 3 ATR. And that's what we've done the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times we've reached 3 ATR. We've typically seen a bounce. But I'm willing to continue to play the downside if that's presented because we have a squeeze that's fired off, right? But I wouldn't be surprised to see a bounce back into this support area right around here of the previous low. So right around that 42.50 area. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if we bounce. Now, another thing, so what I'm kind of thinking is Monday, Tuesday, and then up until the Fed Reserve meeting on Wednesday, we will probably see some pretty boring price action. And I'm kind of expecting to just sell premium rather than trying to play directional trades going into that, just because I know that we will probably see a lot of chop, especially if you look at the NASDAQ. You can see we're trading in this clear range here. And it can be as simple as just marking the high and the low of this range. And you can kind of see that we've been chopping in between this area. So that's kind of number one. Main focus going into until Wednesday. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see it's kind of a wild card with the Fed coming out this week. I don't really know how they're going to respond. And so I don't know if the market really knows what they're going to do. So this sideways action is kind of makes sense. So it may be a better idea to just play the downside through selling premium rather than trying to call a market direction. And then if we take a look at the Dow, similar story here. We sold off. Weekly time frame looks rough. And the Dow does not look that great, right? But only thing we have really working in our favor, oversold. When we were oversold here, we bounced. Oversold here, we bounced. Oversold here, we bounced. And so that's kind of working in our favor. But that's really about it, right? So we may need to correct this oversold bounce to or correct this oversold area to kind of be able to continue downside. So I'm looking for some sort of dead cat bounce into the beginning of this week, and then just selling premium really until we get a decision with the Fed and take advantage of the volatility. If we take a look at the internals, so the dollar looks pretty good in terms of continuing upside, right? So we kind of had this bull flag forming over was resistance, now really is support of this area here around 105.50, right around that area. You can see we kind of formed a bull flag, so I'm waiting to see if we break out and kind of have another move upside. So I'm keeping a close eye on that. And yeah, so that's kind of what I'm watching going into this week in terms of I think dollar could have a strong move upside. We could consolidate for a little while longer and then have that move upside. But for now, I got to remain bullish on the dollar. Weekly squeeze still firing off, daily new squeeze, and looks like that momentum might turn. And then 4-hour, we broke out of this bull flag, and now we're creating another bull flag here. So, I mean, we could see some more upside on this tomorrow. So keep an eye on this. Usually if this moves higher, the markets are going to move lower. And that's kind of the perspective you want to have on that. But I think that the dollar could remain sideways for a few more days, relieving some pressure from the markets. Or we kind of have to play with the perspective that it might end up being a continuation to the downside. So really it comes down to play what the charts are going to give you, but I'm expecting chop into Wednesday and nothing really notable. So that's kind of my take on the markets for this week. It's going to be more of a day trading market like it has been. I've been doing a lot more day trades and selling premium stuff like that rather than trying to pick the overall direction. I mean, this here was pretty clear, the sell-off that we had, and we continue to play this to the downside. Now we're getting into a spot where it's not as clear, but we'll continue to just play it how the market gives it to us, right? And so we can take a look at some of the key names here. Let's see. NVIDIA. So NVIDIA, nothing really here. We're at this support. So I don't necessarily want to short it right here. We're considered to be oversold. So I'm not looking to necessarily short this here. There's not a lot to do. There's a head and shoulders pattern, but I know everyone and their mom sees this. So it's like, do I really want to try and get involved with that and most likely get shooken out with everybody else that's trying to play it? Not really. Microsoft. This name looks good. If the market's going to take off at all, I think this one might be the first one to go. We had a positive earnings report, 12% beat, 4% beat on revenue. So I wouldn't be surprised if this one tried to continue upside. So yeah, we're bull flagging right under resistance of that previous all-time high. And we can kind of mark that level. Look at that there. And then I'm not going to look at Apple because there's nothing really to do with that one for now. Meta, this might be a place to pick it up and potentially see it because this has been a strong name in the markets. So we had a beat on earnings report. We got bought up the next day. So if you want to try and get in early and take this weekly squeeze higher into this 350 area, I think that's very valid in my opinion, as long as the market can hold up. If the market falls apart, everything else is going to fall apart as always. Amazon. This one, a little tricky, but I'm going to keep this on my watch list because if you just look, we've got a weekly or a daily squeeze and we've got a 3-day as well. So let's go to that 3-day and check that out. It's trying to hold up, could end up reversing. So like if you look at the stochastics, looks like it might cross over. Similar story here, might want to cross over, but it's far from having a good bullish structure. So for now, I'm leaning bearish on this name. And let's see if we can fill this gap here. So this one will kind of be top one on my watch list in terms of going into this week. And then Google, not much to do. So really the main ones that I'm going to be watching are Amazon if we flip back bearish, and then Microsoft in terms of a bullish setup. So if I'm looking to go long, I'm going to take Microsoft. If I'm looking to go short, I'm going to look at Amazon. So that's kind of my perspective going into this week. If not, otherwise, besides those two tickers, I'm probably just going to play the indexes and day trade those. Okay, so if you guys have stocks you want me to look at and you want me to review, please put those in the chat and I can do that. So Align, let's see. Okay, so we had a miss on earnings. We're at support. Kind of this major support here. Got a 30-minute squeeze. Okay, so for this one, I actually like, I would consider, let's look at the weekly. Okay, yeah, so we're at a pretty strong support. But with how bad the reaction was to earnings, I would probably lean towards trying to short this 30-minute squeeze and see if you can go tap this new low at 172. That's how I would look to play this one. I would look to short it. I mean, obviously, bad earnings report. Sold off hard after earnings. We were selling off hard prior to that. I wouldn't be surprised if it just continued because, I mean, you got to follow that trend. And then same thing, weekly squeeze fired off. We're only 2 weeks in. We are oversold, so it would be more of a size for zero and short it. That's how I'd play it. Just size for zero, short it, and look for it to go back to 172 and maybe give it some time on it. Okay. And then MMM. Okay. Let's take a look at the different time frames here. Yeah, this one looks like a pretty clean short in my opinion. I like this one short as well. I think we could go retest. I like taking trades that have a daily squeeze or a 4-hour squeeze and taking them back down into 52-week lows, which is this orange line. So I would look to take this down to new 52-week lows, fill this gap. There's a lot of confluence here. So you can see we kind of sold off Friday, and then we have this gap to fill, and we have the 52-week lows right here. Let's see if we can find the next support. And then we're kind of in this demand zone here from a long time ago. But yeah, first thought is on this one, I would look to short it. And have it fill this gap and go to 52-week lows. So right around that $85 area. If you can get it closer up here, that'd probably be more ideal. But yeah, I think this one's a good one to short. Any other tickers you guys want me to look at or review? Other than that, I'll kind of go over the sectors, what those look like, and then from there, that's pretty much it. We reviewed XLK. We looked over XLY. All right, so XLY, this one, not too much to do. I don't have a squeeze on any time frame, but you can see it's clearly bearish. We're in a clear downtrend, so I'm not going to try to fight that, and you kind of just follow the trend until it fails, right? XLC, this might be confluence to short meta. So if we get a bounce back into the 64 area and kind of retest it, this could be a valid short to potentially play the 3-day squeeze and short it. And then we'll see if the weekly squeeze ends up doing anything. But if anything, this 3-day squeeze is valid. SMH. This one's kind of already had a sell off. We can look at the lower time frames. This one looks like it could be a short. So you can kind of wait for momentum to shift on the squeeze. You can look for this to fire off. So, okay, so someone said AMD. So it's probably going to be pretty similar to this chart here because this is the overall sector. But for this, I would kind of look SMH. I would look to short this name. You can kind of see we're building a bear flag. And we've got a squeeze on the lower time frames. We're looking like we're about ready to cross over on the stochastics. So this kind of looks like a clean short. So see what AMD is saying. Okay, so we don't have a squeeze on AMD, so that's not something you love to see. So yeah, this one looks like a good short as well. I think this name, I'll probably keep this on my watch list and look to short this. No, we got earnings coming up, so I wouldn't even play. I'm not going to touch this one. We have earnings coming up on Tuesday, so I'm not going to touch this one. And because I don't play earnings, but from this standpoint, it looks like a good short based off this 3-day. I would trade it off this 3-day time frame and look to short it back into this 80, back into 85. That's kind of how I'd play that one. And maybe you can trigger your entry off of SMH, which this one almost does look better. Let's check the 3-day on this one. They look about the same. You could play AMD from the longer time frame, but maybe trigger your entry based off SMH and when it triggers an entry on these lower time frames. So that's kind of how I'd look to play that one. XLE, we're at support, oversold. These charts are kind of just ugly right now. So yeah, there's nothing I would really want to do on this one. XLF, we've been really weak. You can see the banks have been selling off pretty hard. So Bank of America, this could be a good short here. So if you want to, I would definitely you could keep this on your watch list. This one looks like a good short. Let's see what JPM looks like. Yeah, banks look like they could be a pretty nice short going into this week and trading these to the downside. So yeah, keep an eye on those. Those look pretty good for a short. For banks, this is a choppy mess. Wouldn't up to play that one. So XLP, one of the names that I was kind of keeping an eye on this week was Pepsi. So you can see we've got a cross. Looks like we've got a squeeze. We're looking like we're ready to sell off here. So I think this one might be a good short as well. So if we go look at Pepsi, which is within this sector, I think this one looks like a good short as well, back into 155. So yeah, I'll be watching this one to play the downside and catch it back into 155 and make a new 52-week low and potentially go tag this support right around here. So I do like this one for downside. So keep an eye on that. That one looks good for downside. And so I do like XLP for downside. That whole sector looks pretty good. This one, we've got some resistance here. This XLU, I don't typically play these. A little sketchy, but do notice we had this consolidation for a very long time and kind of traded at this support for a long time. Kind of put it more down here. So we broke that long time support and it fired off this weekly squeeze. So I would not be surprised if we continued lower and retested that 52-week low. So XLP, XLK, XLU all look pretty bearish. This one, not really anything to do here. We're at support. And not really want to touch that there. XLB, same thing. Very choppy chart. We haven't gone anywhere in a really long time. We really haven't gone anywhere since 2021. An XLB. Tesla. Okay, so Tesla looks like we might be having a structure change. Let's see if we can kind of look for some day trading opportunities off these lower time frame squeeze plays. So this could be a valid short. We are just a little bit oversold, so I don't love that. So looking at that, I don't love that chart there. Yeah, we're kind of oversold, so I'd let it work off the oversold on these time frames and see if you can play the squeeze on these and kind of take advantage of that. But yeah, as of right now, we sit in kind of an oversold area. So it might be, I'd sit this one out for now. It could fire short for sure and get more oversold, but it's not the highest probability play, right? So I would kind of wait for a more high probability trade and do that way. So do you guys have any other tickers or are you good to go? So that's kind of my analysis on all the sectors as well as the overall markets. I'm leaning towards a bounce this week, early this week. I'm guessing it won't be that significant, but typically we'll get a move back to the 21 EMA after we get a move to 3 ATR. So I am kind of looking for that, expecting that to happen at some point in the near future, maybe this week, maybe early next week. And I'm expecting some chop into Wednesday and possibly all the way until Thursday after Apple reports. But all right, guys, if you guys don't have any other questions, if you want to trade with us, we've got a 7-day free trial in the chat. So make sure to take advantage of that. You don't have to pay anything, but if you like it, you can stay. If you don't, you can cancel and you don't get charged anything. So that's kind of all that I'm looking at for this week. And yeah, we'd love to have you trade with us. All right, guys, I'll see you guys for the markets and kind of give you updates throughout the week. All right, have a good rest of your night.